My name is Lucy. Standing in the opulent Savannah Yacht Club, surrounded by the city's old money, I watched as the color drained from my father's face. The once confident man, who had always held his head high, now looked like a cornered animal. Before me lay a black binder, tabbed and labeled, filled with the evidence of years of my financial support to my family. It all started in a family where reputation was everything. I grew up in Charleston, a city known for its rich history and social hierarchy. My father, Henry Thompson, ran Thompson Shipping, a business that had been a staple in the local shipping industry for decades. My mother, Victoria, was a socialite who spent her days organizing charity events and maintaining the family's image. My younger sister, Lily, was 24 years old and the apple of my parents' eyes. With her model-like looks and charming personality, she was the face of many local advertising campaigns and social events. I, on the other hand, was the practical one. I worked as a financial auditor at a local shipping firm, spending long hours poring over spreadsheets and invoices. I was the one who noticed the small errors and fixed the big problems, but I was also the one who was often overlooked in family gatherings. My father loved to tell people that Lily had charisma, while I had a head for numbers. It sounded innocent enough, but I could feel the difference in how the room responded to us. Lily would enter a room, and it would light up. When I entered, it was as if the air grew a bit colder. What no one knew was that Thompson Shipping was on the verge of collapse. A series of bad business decisions, including over-investing in new equipment and a costly lawsuit, had put the company in a financial bind. The first time my father called me, he said it was just a temporary problem. "Lucy, sweetheart, I just need a little help moving some money around until the end of the month." That little help turned into a long-term commitment. Over the years, I found myself paying for the company's payroll, property taxes on my parents' mansion, and even Lily's legal fees after a messy public scandal. Lily, meanwhile, was living the high life, attending parties and photo shoots, completely oblivious to the financial struggles of the family business. My parents never once thanked me for my help. They took it for granted, as if it was my duty to support them. One night, there was a charity gala for a local environmental cause that Lily was fronting. I had just finished a 12-hour shift at work and was exhausted. But I still showed up, wearing a pair of heels that were already killing my feet. As I stood in the corner, checking my phone because I knew the company's payroll draft was due that night, which I had covered for the past 3 months, my father decided to make a spectacle of me. He raised his glass, looked straight at me, and said, "You'll never be as successful as Lily. She knows how to represent this family, while you're just buried in those numbers all day." The room erupted in laughter, and Lily smiled smugly, as if she had won some unspoken competition. Something inside me snapped. I looked at him and said, "Then let Lily pay the bills. I'm done sending money." My father scoffed and said, "What money? We've never received a single cent from you." I was stunned. How could he deny all the help I had given? But I didn't argue. Instead, I just looked at him and my sister, and in my mind, I pictured the folder on my laptop filled with every bank transfer, invoice, and payment I had made over the years. I left the gala in a rage. The night air was thick and humid, and by the time I reached my car, my hands were shaking. I drove home to my small apartment near the harbor, kicked off my heels, and opened my laptop. There it was, the folder I had been building for years, called Anchor. Inside were subfolders categorized by month and type of expense, payroll rescue, tax payments, legal fees for Lily, and more. I totaled up all the money I had sent over the years. The number on the screen was $215,347. It was like a punch in the gut. I called my old friend, Jake, who worked in finance. He was the only person I trusted to look at these numbers without judgment. I told him everything that had happened at the gala. Jake didn't waste any time. He said, "Print everything out and stop covering their expenses tonight. If you wait, you'll lose your nerve." So, I logged into the company's payroll system and removed my backup authorization. I also turned off the automatic transfer for my parents' property tax. The next morning, my mother called me 6 times, and Lily called 3 times. My father didn't call at all, thinking his silence would scare me. But it just gave me the courage to keep going. A few days later, my mother sent me a text inviting me to Sunday dinner. "Let's discuss this as a family. Be reasonable," she wrote. That phrase, "be reasonable," had haunted me my whole life. It always meant I should sacrifice my own needs for the family. I decided to go. Jake told me to bring copies of the evidence, not the originals. So, I packed a slim envelope with a summary of my payments and headed to my parents' house. When I walked into the dining room, it was as if nothing had changed. The silver was polished, the candles were lit, and my mother's fine china glowed in the warm light. Lily was there, looking innocent in a pastel dress. My father sat at the head of the table, his posture stiff. Before the salad plates were cleared, my father said, "You caused a scene at the gala. You owe Lily an apology." I set my fork down and said, "I'm not apologizing for telling the truth." My father's jaw tightened. "What truth? You've made up some story about supporting us." I took the envelope out of my bag and slid a single page across the table. It showed the dates, amounts, and purposes of my payments. My father glanced at it with a bored expression, but as he read the first line, his eyes widened. Payroll bridge, Thompson Shipping, property tax installment, Thompson Residence. His fingers tightened around the paper. My mother leaned over to look and went pale. Lily whispered, "What is this?" I said, "This is just a preview. I'm willing to show you more in private before I make it public." My father tried to scoff, but his voice cracked. "You're exaggerating. These were just gifts you offered." I looked at him and said, "Say it again. Say in front of all of us that you never received a single dollar from me." He couldn't. He just sat there in silence. I stood up and said, "The next payroll issue is yours. The next tax bill is yours. Lily's problems are hers. I'm done." As I walked out, I asked, "Have you ever noticed that the person you called difficult is always the one carrying the weight you refuse to lift?" The following Monday, my father called me in a panic. The payroll didn't clear. "What did you do?" I said, "I stopped doing what you said I never did." He started yelling, calling me all sorts of names, but I just hung up. Jake discovered something even worse. He noticed that some of my payments were recorded internally as owner contributions, but not all of them were reported to the accountant. It was clear that my father had been using my money to keep the business afloat while presenting himself as the sole savior. There was an important business dinner coming up at the Savannah Yacht Club. Many of the city's most influential people would be there, including my father's major suppliers and potential investors. Jake said, "If he lies again there, you end it." I expanded the binder, adding more evidence and a legal notice of my withdrawal from further support. On the day of the dinner, Lily left me a voicemail with fake tears, begging me not to come. "Dad's health is at stake, and you're making us look bad," she said. I dressed in black, pinned my hair back, and packed the binder into a leather bag. As I walked into the yacht club, I could feel the tension in the air. My mother saw me first and went pale. My father's face turned white when he saw the binder. Dinner began, and my father stood up to give a speech about the integrity of Thompson Shipping. I stood up before he could sit down. "Before we celebrate integrity," I said calmly, "my father should correct something he said at the gala. He told everyone he never received a single dollar from me." The room fell silent. My father's face turned red. He tried to dismiss me, saying the documents were manipulated. But Jake, who was with me, spoke up. "These are bank-confirmed transfers with all the necessary details. They're real." One of the investors reached for the binder and started flipping through the pages. As he read, His face grew serious. My father finally broke down and said, "Please, I know I was wrong. Don't do this." The room was in shock. Lily started crying and yelling at me, but I just looked at her and said, "I stopped financing your lies." I then handed the legal notice to the investors. As of now, I'm no longer responsible for any of the Thompson family's business or personal obligations. The collapse of Thompson Shipping was swift. Within 2 weeks, the refinancing deal fell through. Suppliers started demanding cash on delivery, and the company missed several major payments. Lily lost her advertising contracts, and her fiancé broke off their engagement. My father tried one last time to talk to me. He waited outside my office, looking old and defeated. He said, "You made your point. You can stop now." I told him, "The truth doesn't need my permission. It just needed my silence, and you've used that up." 6 months later, Thompson Shipping was no more. The inventory was sold off, and the warehouse lease was terminated. People in Charleston started to talk. They said my father had overextended, my mother had lived beyond their means, and Lily had been living in a bubble. And they said that I, the quiet one, had been the only one with a head on my shoulders. I moved to a new apartment with a view of the river. Jake and I started a financial consulting firm, helping small businesses manage their finances. I keep one page from the binder in my desk drawer, not to dwell on the pain, but to remind myself of how close I came to being used up by my family. So, I ask you, if your family only respects you after you stop saving them, would you ever go back? Or would you let the silence teach them what your love never could?